Do you think we will still have the quote unquote best teams playing for the championship? Because that's the only thing that I kind of worry about. Because as much belly aching as there was about Florida State not getting in, which I think they had a very good argument, I did feel like this year, although there were only 4 teams that got in, we got the 4 best teams. Like, do you think there is an instance in which, because here's the thing about football, you play one bad game, you're out. Like, similar to March Madness, maybe not like the same thing, but do you think we will still get the 4 quote unquote best teams that are kind of in the later stages of this?
That's, here's what I would say is that it's going to be, even though this isn't March Madness, it's going to be similar in that just because you have one of the best 4 teams in the country does not necessarily mean that you make it to the final. Now, I believe the top 4 teams here will end up getting a bye. Yeah. So they get a break, which will definitely help. And so that will obviously increase their chances of getting to the final here. But every year we see this. Just look at Georgia as a perfect example. Right now, I know they didn't make the playoff, but I think a lot of people would say at the end of the year, was Georgia one of the best teams in the country? Yes, no question about it. However, they faltered at the end of the season, just like you can falter in the early stages of this playoff. So we'll see it every year. There will be at least one team, and maybe there won't be, but I guarantee you more often than not, there will be an upset that takes place and you'll say, wow, they had an incredible season and they didn't make it as far as everyone thought they should have.
Yeah, from a betting perspective, does this sway you off taking favorites in college football a little bit more? Because we have seen this over the past, few years or decades or whatever, is some of these teams will have a cupcake schedule and a cakewalk to getting into the college football playoff. But now when you have to play more games, it feels like there will be a little bit more volatility, because we talked about this earlier on the show. March Madness is the ultimate, volatile betting market just because there are so many games in the postseason. Do you think this increases the volatility of who wins the national championship?
I mean, I think it does to a point, just by virtue of the fact that you're going to have more teams that get the opportunity to play for it. I also think at the same time that we're in an era where the rich are going to get richer here. And we're already seeing it with name, image, and likeness, where you have these blue blood schools who are raising a hell of a lot of money, and they are able to bring in the best players. They have more depth, and there is becoming more of a disparity in college football because of that. So while, yes, teams will have a shot because there will be more teams and there's more possibility for an upset by virtue of how this is laid out, at the same time, we are really in danger, if you're talking about college football as a whole, of being more top heavy than ever. And college football has, in many ways, always been kind of a top-heavy sport, because if you're a blue blood school and you have more money, you have better facilities and you have more promotion and everything that goes along with that. But now you're talking about actual dollars, and actual dollars matter in a big way, which is why guys play for 85 different schools before they finally graduate. So at some point, I think something needs to be done so that we do have more of a level playing field, which will include a bigger field in the playoff.
Does it make any sense at all, Chelsa, to back South Carolina at just plus 110, even though they're 25-0 and unblemished so far on the year?
Well, here's the thing that's different about the women's side. And I am not somebody who's super into the weeds with women's college basketball. Doesn't it feel like there's less parity? Like, we were just talking about how volatile the men's side is. I don't think that's the case for the women's side. So even if you're taking one of the favorites at like kind of a short price, I feel like it's still worth it. Like, some of these teams are just so good. There's a chance, there are other teams that are good as well. It's not just one team that South Carolina is just going to run the table. Like, I think they can lose to a team, but do you get what I'm saying? Like, I feel like there is a smaller pool with which you will be drawing the national champion. So I think you can make a case for taking a favorite on the women's side.
Yeah, I think you can too. And I'm like you, I'm no expert at the women's game, but I mean, Don Staley just has a wagon down there. I mean, they are unbelievable. And so at plus 110, here's the thing. Yeah, it's not a lot of plus money, but the longer this season goes on, this will dip into minus money. So yes, you're saying, oh man, there's not a lot of, there is value, because I can guarantee you within a week or two, all of a sudden you're laying the juice. So why not take it now plus 110? I'd do it.
Let's try to get people reacclimated to the action. And here's a line on the rundown that I didn't think I would be reading. It says, Kate is going to be on Charlotte in the second half of the NBA season.
Oh.
You got to explain yourself because you've come on the show and you have backed the Detroit Pistons. And now you're telling us that we need to back the Charlotte Hornets. Explain yourself, please.
I think it's just going to be for a game or two until the market adjusts a little bit. After the trade deadline, I mean, you bring in Seth Curry, Davis Bertans, Trey Mann, who was the other one? Grant Williams. And all of a sudden, the Hornets, they're 3 games before the break. And after the trade deadline, they won all 3. They held their opponents to, what was it? Under 107 points in each of those games. All of a sudden, their defense has gone and is third in defensive rating over that time, 11th in offensive rating. So, I mean, the Hornets are still going to be really bad, and they're not a team that I'm going to bet to win too many of these games, but I think the market's going to be a little bit slow to react to, you know, some lines that they put out. So I kind of like them against the Jazz tomorrow night. I also really like the over in that game because the Jazz at home are just fantastic. They put up huge numbers. They're averaging, I believe, 121 points, best 3-point attempts, makes, things like that when they're at home. So they're always an over team, especially with Charlotte's ability to kind of run the floor. So that's what I'm looking at in that game. But I do think Charlotte, you're going to have some value playing on them first couple games back here.
What about the Western Conference? You can bet on either conference in the NBA at BetMGM, as we know, and it's an interesting race. You've got the Nuggets, you got the T-Wolves, you got the Thunder. Maybe there's someone else you're looking at. Who do you like to win the Western Conference and why?
You know, there are a couple teams that I think could win the West. Obviously, the Nuggets. When you have Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, MPJ, that whole group, especially with the experience of winning the championship last year, like the Nuggets certainly have a path to winning the Western Conference. I also really like the Clippers, which is hard to say because health and rest and all of that has been such a factor for that team for so many years with Kawhi Leonard missing time, Paul George, but they've been healthy this season and those players have been playing in back-to-back spots and they've been trying to win games. And over the last month, they've been one of the hottest teams. You can even find them right now as the favorite to win the West and still get a little bit of value there. 2 teams that I don't see winning it that are up higher on the odds board is the Suns. One, because again, health. Their big 3, KD, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, are they able to stay healthy? Something always seems to pop up with at least one of them as we enter into the postseason. And then the Timberwolves. I love the Timberwolves right now. They have the number 1 seed in the West. I think that they could keep that going into the playoffs, but I think they're still a little too inexperienced and immature at times to win a Western Conference Finals and go to the NBA Finals. I think we're still maybe like a year out of Minnesota getting there, but I think they're also a team you could bet on to make a deep run in the postseason. I just don't see them winning the West completely.